Got spring fever?
So I want to just tie together a few of the loose threads that we've left about globalization. Right? Now, we can easily conclude that profit-seeking on its own is not evil. But remember that profit, especially particularly for oneself, is prudential rather than moral. Right? So seeking profit without moral constraint often does become immoral. One question we might ask is whether or not immoral profit-seeking starts wars. I've often cited the text Empire's Workshop by an author named Greg Grandin, Grandin, in which the main thesis is that all American wars have had a single sine qua non. Which means without which not. And that has been the expansion of American access to foreign markets. We've also noted that hegemony follows from nationalism, and maybe that's the problem. Maybe in order to escape these problems, we need to evolve beyond the nation state, which is antiquated. It was a good response when the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648 was written, but maybe it's just causing us problems now. The fact that we have fought wars in order to maintain access to markets or create access to markets and thereby increase profit, because capitalism is, as you probably know already, grow or die. This is the America to which Glenn Beck is probably willfully blind. Now you can maintain something like Glenn Beck's point of view, but if you don't read Empire's Workshop or something like that, you just don't know. Another one is A People's History of America by Howard Zinn, Z-I-N-N. Unless you know the facts from those books, you can't really say that you've considered the question. You're not really in the conversation at all. It seems that there's a particular American disease, thinking that everybody wants to be us. Right? Now, if you don't hold that view, that's fine, but enough people do that those who benefit from turning the world into America are able to exploit this particular mental disease. Right? Now, disease aside, whatever, whether or not I'm wrong about that, it's hard to argue against the premise that when profit is sought without regard to human life, capitalism is no more justifiable than terrorism for the exact same reasons. Right? Now, Arthur Schlesinger Jr., whose paper I've put online on the WebCT site, defends the thesis that national life has always alternated between epochs of advance and consolidation. So if we're aware of this phenomenon, having conceptualized it and named it, are we able to ameliorate its effects, anticipate it, and plan accordingly in order to achieve more moral ends? Another concept of which we're aware is evolution. Right? If we can evolve consciously, perhaps we can evolve beyond this cycle that Schlesinger has spelled out for us. Right? Just bring it back to the point. If markets are a domain within society, we need to remember that profits, as results of acts subject to moral evaluation, cannot be gained at the expense of other people's lives. And this has happened throughout American history. So, do we ditch the system? I don't think so. I think we still need markets. I think capitalism is a good way to organize these markets, but we need more moral constraints. Now, for the papers, first of all, this ought to go without saying, but if there's an article on WebCT directly related to your chosen topic and you ignore it, that's going to be to the detriment of your grade. So don't do that. And And if you have questions about whether or not that's the case, just email me. You know you can do that anytime. The best theme around which to organize your papers is going to be the theme of the class, right? To demonstrate that market arrangements are predicated upon moral arrangements, and thus the undermining of moral arrangements thereby undermines market arrangements, right? Now anybody agrees with that, from Glenn Beck to Noam Chomsky, just to take a facile contrast. Your specific thesis for your final paper, for your term paper, will argue for a particular approach to justifying particular moral arrangements, right? So whether or not America is acting morally is going to depend upon the moral system that you defend from a particular philosopher. All right. Don't fail to distinguish the moral from the legal. All right. For example, saying that the SEC has no case against, say, Goldman, which it may not. It looks more and more like it isn't. And thanks to Jason for the information on that. But that doesn't show much in the terms of this class, right? Because we distinguish the moral from the legal, just because something is legal doesn't make it moral, right? Doing so, ignoring this distinction, begs the question by presuming that we have the right laws in place, right? Remember, we used to have Jim Crow laws, which were in essence racist laws, right? Also, laws can be and have been paid for by the very members whose actions are otherwise curtailed by these laws, right? So laws have been paid for, in some cases, by the very actors under scrutiny. I mean, what else do you think lobbyists do? So to put it another way, the question in business ethics most basically is Act X, whatever that is, right or wrong? So the least we can say, in the case of wrongdoing, is that the actor's influence in augmenting law should be carefully scrutinized. If we're going to keep these people at the table and have the lobbyists influencing what laws we get, we need to have them under heavier scrutiny because they're the ones benefiting from it and perhaps getting away with immoral acts, depending upon the system that you evaluate them by. Upton Sinclair, an American author, may have said it best. It's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends upon his not understanding it. So that's my cards on the table. And I did promise at least one more session. So remember we talked about standard of living versus happiness. Are they the same thing? It turns out the data shows that that's probably not the case. So this one's called Why So Down America. Why so down America? Let it burn against the ceiling. Can't make our limits on the borders. You're not feeling. I ain't talking about drugs here. They could you. Well, then you're probably nailed to the ceiling like I do. Why so down America? Live on the against the ceiling. Can't make our limits on the bodies. Feeling my feelings. Bypass this system. Don't eat enough food. I tell you why, but I don't want to be rude. The true wealth is connection. Just the people on you. Give them the time and mind you let them give you. What's down America? Live on against the sea. Can they got limits on the bodies? You cannot be